Sacred Sites with Steve Ray, here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
We were just in Ephesus 4 months ago. We had 130 people with us, and that sounds like a lot of people say, whoa, that's a lot of people. But when you do it organized and you do it quickly and professionally, it really goes smoothly. Our motto is, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, call Uber. So everybody's on our buses 10 minutes early. We always leave 1 minute to 8. We're very fast and punctual. But anyway, I expect us walking through Ephesus. We did a visit there with Mary and then with Paul for 2 weeks. I think this is going to take us 2 weeks to get through Ephesus. As if you're on the bus with me, I'm going to show you and tell you what you would see. So we just did this 4 months ago. And just as a recap, Ephesus was one of the large cities, 250,000 people. It was the kind of the hub of what's Turkey of today, the size of Texas. I reminded you of that last time, so everybody down there understands how big Turkey is. It was called Asia Minor. And we're going to walk through those ruins today, but we're only going to see a portion of them because only a small portion of Ephesus has been excavated. Cities like that have been totally covered, and you have to start digging, and you find things under the ground, and it takes a long time. But it's only been partially excavated, but it's some of the best Roman ruins that have been discovered. It's just fascinating walking through there because if you have even a little bit of an imagination, you can follow it through. So, okay, our celestial cruise ship has left Istanbul, went to Pergamum. We stopped for a day in Pergamum. That's in Revelation 2. We'll go there sometime, not today. And we arrive in what's called Kushadasi. That's the port city of Ephesus. And everybody is really full of anticipation on the ship because, they've heard about Ephesus and they know this is going to be a great day. And it's going to be 12 hours. We're going to be at this site and we're going to have a great lunch. We're going to have a wonderful time. And everybody's full of anticipation. A lot of them have waited for a lifetime to see this. And we all have a quick breakfast, and then we go to the theater, and we wait to be released from the ship. We're all sitting there. There's other groups as well on this, but we're the largest group. We kind of own the whole ship. And I make arrangements with the leaders up to be the first group off. So they say, Steve Ray group, you can leave first. And our group all gets up and we rush to go down the stairs and we go up. But I'm already outside because I want to meet the guides, make sure they know exactly what we're going to do. I tell them I have your tips in my pocket. I let them know that ahead of time so they know who to listen to along the way. And now we don't have Christian guides because there are no Christians in Turkey. It's 99.9% Muslim. There's only like 80,000 Christians in the whole country of 90 million people. But the two guys that I work with both have said, we're no longer Muslims. We want to be Christians because they've worked with me for 20 years. And they said, we've watched your groups, we've watched you. And they said, we're no longer Muslim, we're Christian now. So anyway, we arrive at Kushadasi, we get off the bus, everybody gets on gets off the ship and we all get on our 3 buses and we head through what you could possibly see it as part of Texas or maybe Central California. We drive through a lot of olive trees and farmland. And if you didn't know you were in Turkey, except for the Turkish signs, you wouldn't know because of it's very much like parts of the United States. But in the distance, about a half an hour long, you see a big theater, 24,000 seat theater, which we're going to visit shortly. But we swing around Ephesus because we want to go up Nightingale Mountain. And I know I mentioned this before, but I just want to touch on it because this is our day in Ephesus. So we're headed to Mary's house. She lived there with John and Mary left Jerusalem, went to Ephesus when he became the bishop there. And we go up Nightingale Mountain about 10 miles up, and we pass a beautiful bronze statue of Mary. It just takes everybody's breath away. It's so beautiful. Everybody wants to stop and take pictures, so we do. But I still want to be the first ones there because the crowds start forming, and I understand crowds, and I don't like lines. So we want to be the first ones there, which we always are. So we get off and we go through the turnstiles and we go into Mary's house. We have mass there. We see Mary's house where she lived for a period of time. And we went through that whole story before. I can't get people out of there because it's so peaceful and beautiful. They don't want to leave. And there's these nice shops that have all of these beautiful icons and rosaries and books about Mary living there. And it's just, come on, people, we got to go. We got a lot to do today. So they all come along, and we're all on the bus on time because they know I'll leave them if they don't. So if people know that, they will get on the bus on time. So anyway, now we head down the mountain to Ephesus, and we come in at the top of the city. I always jokingly say that when we go, there's a long city, you go down the road. For the groups that are good, I take them to the top and we walk down. But for the groups that are bad, the ones I don't like, I start at the bottom and I make them walk up instead, because you could go either way. But anyway, just joking aside, we get off, go through the turnstiles. We meet our guides there. They get us ready to go. And we start walking through 2,000 years of history. And it's just fascinating. I like to imagine walking down the streets at the time Paul was there. You would have been almost run over by chariots with their wheels clattering on the streets. In fact, these are stone streets, and you can see the chariot wheel tracks, because they would run their chariots up and down these roads, and over time they wore grooves into the roads, so you can actually see that, and the chariot wheels would just stay right in those tracks that they wore. So I always point that out. Look at this, is where chariots were, and you'd see philosophers huddling together in hushed tones, and soldiers marching around in the streets, and people in their togas, and women wrapped with their robes. And it would be, I always want people to use their imagination to go back 2,000. We're not just seeing a bunch of rocks and stones. I don't want people to just see rocks and stones. I want them to use their imagination and see what they would have imagined back in the days of Paul. So we start going down the road. Everyone's amazed at the size and the beauty of Ephesus, and the ruins, the temples that you can still see, and the statues and the ancient shops. And I think I mentioned last time, but it's always one of the highlights of our group is to see the toilets that they have there, because every time I mentioned last week, people want to get off the bus. They want to go right straight to the restrooms. But they had them here, but only for men. The women didn't have restrooms. And I sent you a picture of them. It's a stone slab, and it goes around like in the inside of a room, but it's outside. And there's seats every 2 feet. There's a hole, and there's no partitions. And the guys would all come and just sit there next to each other and use the toilet. And there was running water underneath. So it was very modern in a sense. And you could find these kind of ancient toilets in Rome. I found some in Philippi when I did our movie on St. Paul. I was sitting on one when I'm talking about Paul saying that all of his self-righteousness he considered as dung. Sitting on the toilet where I'm saying that. Anyway, so and they were cold. You can imagine sitting on these stone seats. So they'd send their servants ahead of time to warm up the seats for them. So this is just for men. And anyway, everybody wants to see those. That's one of the highlights everybody wants to see. Anyway, so now we go past the Celsius Library. And this wasn't there during Paul's time, but we see it. And it was the third largest library in the world at the time. Alexandria, Egypt had the largest library, and then Pergamum, which we just visited yesterday on this cruise. We went up to the top of Pergamum. The word Pergamum comes from the word parchment, and it means that this is where they invented paper. And it's not paper like you and I know. That wasn't invented until 200 years or so ago. This was where they took papyrus, which was Egyptian plants, water plants, and they put them at angles of 90-degree angle, pound them together, dry them, and then take a little sandpaper, and it was a very rough kind of a paper, but it was really plant. And so that was Pergamum. That was the second largest library, but Celsius was the third largest library. And whenever you see pictures of Ephesus, you're going to see the facade of that 2-story building. And you'll always see our groups. I sent you a picture of our groups there. But that library wasn't built till 50 years after Paul. And by the way, whenever the Bible mentions book, it's referring to a scroll. They didn't have books until around 300 or so AD. So now we go to the 24,000 seat theater. That's the next thing as we're walking through the roads. And there we see Artemis of the Ephesians. And that's long gone, but it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And in Acts 19, there was a big, huge riot we talked about last time. But I take the people into that theater because it's still there and it's still magnificent. You can only imagine what it was like in its glory days. And I always sit and I read Acts chapter 19 down where what we call the orchestra pit, where the actors were. And then I have my group sit way up up on top and I read Acts 19. I kind of dramatize it for everybody, and they can hear me up there as well as they could if they were sitting in the front rows, because the sea behind us carries the breeze up. You guys, like I've said before, you guys use the technology of the day in front of your microphones to get the word out. But here, Paul used his technology of the day, which was the breeze. Well, anyway, that's a great story, and we visit that. And next, we're going to go to the Council Church, but we're out of time, so we'll have to do Us in Ephesus Part 2 next week.
Sacred Sites with Steve Ray is heard live every Monday on the Guadalupe Radio Network program Morning Joy, hosted by Keith Downey. For more authentic Catholic content, go to grnonline.com/joy.